Hungary and some other Eastern European countries. I hope discussing this issue on the European level will bring a better understanding of sports participation and will make differences in the countries who are the leaders of non-participants. Let's talk about Hungary now, a member state of the European Union since 2004. And this is a small country with 10 million people in Central Europe and the territory of 93,000 square meters. 69% of the population is Roman Catholic and 21% is Calvinist. The ethnic minority is Roma population, which is estimated to 7 to 10%. In 1989 and 1990, the country steadily shifted from multi-party democracy to market-oriented economy after 40 years of state socialism. The combination of these changes also created a transition in societal norms and values. The values and actions grounded in this formal socialization process were not valid anymore, and the whole country needed to establish itself on a new value system and a new norm system. This led to a value crisis across the whole society and created a new situation for all citizens. Of course, this also had an effect on the societal subsystem of sport. Similar to other Eastern European countries, sport was state-funded and state-organized in the bipolar world, and it was also a symbol of political existence. Hungary is still among the powers of the world in terms of the Olympic success, which is a paradox to its size and also to its economic strength. Since the changes, however, its medal collection had experienced some decline. From its prestigious 8th position, now it's among the top 20 countries in the world. The past 20 years, the primary focus of Hungarian sport was to maintain and actually to restore the elitism on European and World Championships and Olympic Games. It created a weak and neglected sport club system with centralized and paternalistic atmosphere and high involvement from the state. Most agree that the real change in sport in Hungary never has happened. Maybe this is the reason for the overall low participation rate. Recently, however, two quite substantial changes were made in Hungary. One is a new financial support scheme that was implemented and also approved by the European Commission, which allowed it to include tax-deductible private money for the funding of 5 team sports. Also, the sports law of 2004 has been modified, which created a complete new structure for the governance of Hungarian sport. Today, I would like to tell you about the trends of youth participation along the determination of social stratification, to introduce and to evaluate the recent structural and funding modifications of Hungarian sport, and to outline the possible opportunities and limitations of Hungarian sport today. I use both quantitative and qualitative approach, analyze the statistical data from the youth research series, reviewed documents and about the new changes of the structural and funding system, and also interviewed key managers and decision makers in Hungarian sport for all. The Youth 2000, 2004 and 2008 research is a comprehensive series of youth social position, education, career path, political views, lifestyle, leisure time and sport participation, and some other areas. It provides a national representative data for age of 15 and 29. It was mostly funded by the Ministry of Youth and Sport and conducted by the National Youth Research Institute. Let's see some data. We can see that 1/3 of the Hungarian youth population is active and take part in regular physical exercise. Over the first decade of the new millennium, there was a growth in the rate, then a slight decline, and which is mostly can be connected to the economic shifts of the country. The modern youth life, with its extended years in education, delay of independent life, delay the entry to the job market, and the delayed establishment of families, and also the post-figurative lifestyle element would assume that youth would participate more in physical activities, and actually they would have time to do so. But the involvement of youth in sport is very low in comparison to other European countries, which is also grounded in the discrepancies in the autonomy of youth, in integrative social functions, fight for educational capital, and the collection of degrees and diplomas. Also, we can see the limited opportunities and the emerging increase in unemployment. The numbers also show that sport is still quite gendered. Differences between men and women even deepen during the Olympic period, and as in Europe, the general is 8%, in Hungary the difference is 20%. The sport club membership is critically low, and it was critically declining after the changes in 1990. But why young people do not exercise? The most common reason, not surprisingly, not having time. But let's see what is the hidden determination of sport participation. All demographic and social variables have significant contribution to the creation of sport participation. Today, mostly the younger generation, people who live in larger settlements, and mostly male population have access to sport, and they are more easily included. There are social groups that are completely out of the scope of sporting opportunities, such as the older generations, not even speaking about the elderly, and of course, minority groups. I will call your attention to 3 determining factors. We can see that youth with higher education degrees demonstrate the highest participation rates, and their advantage slightly has grown over the 10 years period. The other important factor is the economic position. It is clear that the advantages groups of society show the highest involvement in sports. And between the two ends of society, there is a continuously widening gap, which was doubled in 2004, and by 2008 has tripled. Today, sport is not for the disposal for the middle classes, not for the societal elite, while low-profile groups contain about 50% of the whole society. Again, it seems that academic institutions provide youth with sporting opportunities, and as soon as they leave these institutions, their involvement declines. Life-period actions, such as having families or losing jobs, are fundamental effects on sport and involvement. I would emphasize unemployment as a new phenomenon to a country where before the majority of the society had work and also job security. After the changes, 60% of youth reported that they have been unemployed for an extended period of time since their entry to the job market. As a summary, we can say that social stratification has a strong role whether or not one will engage in regular physical exercise or sport. And it seems that the lack of time is just an indirect reason for inactivity, rather a cause by the second or third job that people need to hold for securing a fair life. Successful Olympic sports such as fencing, modern pentathlon, and kayak canoe, however, has limitations. They are very expensive. They are in big need of infrastructure, and it's very hard to include mass number of people. Among the sports that young people prefer, we cannot find these sports of the other Olympic success, such as fencing, kayak, canoes, gymnastics, modern pentathlon, or even water polo, are not reaching the statistical level on a nationwide representative sample. New alternatives for physical activities showed statistical results on the same sample. Rollerblading, for example, mountain biking, Zumba, walking, cycling are all sports that youth prefer and started to play, of course, outside of any organization and individually. These sports are representing enjoyment of movement and rather the competition element. It seems that alternatives for sporting practices became a need for youth in today's society. Let's see news changes. In 2011, the new financial support scheme was implemented, and that was also passed by the European Commission. The scheme authorized companies to deduct monies of their taxes upon support given to 5 designated sports. The sports were all team sports, but not all the team sports. The initial goal will bring new funding from the private sector and to make the sport finances more transparent and controllable. Applications were submitted. 65% of applications were referred to grassroots sports, and it brought about 60 million euros into sport. And it's very important that new money is coming into the whole structure of sport. The most beneficiary was football, but all other included team sports are not, and not all the team sports, received never seen level of financial support. The civil organizations can apply with long-term specific action plans. 5 areas were identified as possible areas of support: grassroots sports, competition costs, salaries, facilities and equipment, and training of human resources, training of coaches. All very relevant areas, and the support is only to be received if the plan is passed by the National Sport Federation. The structural changes. All sport NGOs were gathered under one NGO or umbrella organization with the allocation of tasks to oversee all areas of sport and allocate state funding to different causes. The goal was to establish a transparent structure and a one-channel funding system. This umbrella organization became the Hungarian Olympic Committee. 5 branches were created, incorporating the previously independently working NGOs like vice presidencies. All units received 10 members, who became also the members of the National Olympic Committee. Considering that the Hungarian Olympic Committee and its assembly has 250 members, representing the Olympic sports and their organizations, the new 40 members will need to make substantial dedication to endorse their interests. Let's move about to the opinions. I've interviewed key decision makers in Sports for All in the present and the past. I asked about the place and the role of Sports for All in the society and the subsystem of sport. Their opinion about the new support scheme and its effect on sport for all, and also the new sport structure and effects on the sports participation rates. And let's see what they said. One of them said, leisure sport was always a secondary importance. Only medal counts that it should be gold. This intimidates people, make them think that sport is only for those who are talented and the best. We all wanted structural changes. We all knew that there needs to be a central umbrella organization, but we never thought that it's going to be the Olympic Committee. Integration is a good thing. It depends on us how we can capitalize on it, but it won't be easy. They say it is also for the communal good for sport, but we actually lost our sponsors because they can save money, the companies can save money by supporting the 5 lucky ones. Sport is very structured, and the elite will always look down on the average exerciser. I hope one day elite sport will understand that we are working on the same market for each other. As a summary, I would say sport remains gendered and may serve those with high level of education and economic power. Emphasis on talent management and elite athleticism will still strongly characterizing sport. Sport is very structured, and the players or decision makers are not united. New offers and solutions for sporting opportunities are awaited by youth. It seems, however, that the recent structural and funding modifications of Hungarian sport, if well implemented, may provide a potential for actions also in sport for all. Whether the changes will finally bring the long-awaited democratization and social integration of and into sport, and would initiate a process in which sport participation would take an incline to remain a question of strategy and implementation of plans. And the new legal and funding environment needs to be bringing this answer, and the answer needs to be measured. And hope this would also finally allow to implement the evidence-based policy also in the state.
Very much, Szilvia. That brings us to the end of the presentation results, but now it's a chance for you to comment or ask questions to the presenters, all 4 of them collectively or one of them specifically. So I will open the floor for your comments.
I would love to know from 3 researchers, how do you define sport? In Canada, we have lots and lots of debate over sport participation versus sport versus physical activity. So I'd love to know how you define it as you embark on each of your research projects.
Well, that's not only a good question, but something we on a daily basis encounter some difficulties with more and more. That's one of the disadvantages, maybe, that sport is becoming more and more popular. In our own research, because we take for granted that you should use at least a year for a reference, one year as a reference period of time, because if I practice, for example, skiing in wintertime and I do my survey in summertime, I will never know or be included in this survey, etc. Then the question is about how frequent or intense and in what kind of organizational context you practice sport. And that's a debate that is still going on, it will never end. But again, as we accept that more and more people are practicing sport in their own way, I think we should reconsider this kind of definition. It's not only about the strong club-organized sport, it could even be also other kinds of physical activities. But again, doing gardening or doing dishes, cleaning or washing the dishes in your kitchen, etc. Is this a kind of physical activity? Of course, but for most of us it's not a recreational type of physical activity. So maybe that could be a third criteria. We can discuss like this and go on like this, but it's a very important question. And again, from the measure point, the initiative you took a couple of years ago, this is one of the issues put forward to try to take a standardized or an operationalized definition of sport. And I think it is possible.
It is hard to define sport. You also see policy going from sport to physical activity, which even broadens the concept more than the concept of sport. And if we look at sport, at least for the national surveys, then we kind of leave it to the respondent what his or her perception is of sport. We offer a show card with 44 types of sport, and then they can decide for their own whether they practice one of these sports when they consider it sports. And they can also mention other sports they practice that are not on the list. And it's hard to really define sport as one concept or one activity. I think that's also the power of sport. It's that broad, and that a lot of parties can use sport because it is so broad and has so many values in itself.
I also agree it's very difficult to have a standard definition, and the reason for research data being different by study it also could be that the concept of how we approach physical activity and sport, how we define, is different. And I started to have the feeling that we in our country have an understanding of physical activity and sporting activity on a much stronger and much stricter way. Once a year or once a month is not considered sporting activity. Sporting activity as a minimum considered to be 2 times a week, 1 hour physical exercise. And in this case, the European and the Hungarian studies might have some differences. And also, it's also in the mind of people what they define themselves as being physical active or doing sports. As probably came out from my presentation, we are very performance oriented. The whole system is performance and talent oriented. And it's also the general concept in people's mind that yes, I do walk or do cycle or I do swim sometimes, but it's not enough for being characterized physically active or doing sports. In the study that I reported from, in 2000, we had frequencies also, and also had a subjective question. Do you do physical activity or regular sporting exercise? And they had an option of saying yes and no. In the meantime, the next question would be the frequency, once a week, 2 times a week, etc. And coded the answers and which matched. And the subjective definition by the people was equal to the objective coded answers that was fulfilled the 2 times a week, 1 hour exercise. So people only consider themselves if they are really regularly exercising.
Thank you. Very quick comment. Final questions.
It's not only a question of how to define sport, I think it's also a matter of how to measure it. And I see 3 possible ways of doing that. First of all, we have the more objective one. This should be the more preferable one. But there is one big disadvantage of using pedometers and step counters, something like that. If I'm wearing this kind of material and I'm somewhat stressy for the moment, and I tip with my leg, well, this instrument is still counting. This is not doing sports, I think. It's just measuring how many times I use my leg. Well, but it's very objective, of course. Then a more administrative way of registering sport participants, then we rely on what the sport federation and sport clubs see as sport participation, their members. But I could do very useful work at the sport club, doing the tap, and there's nothing wrong with it. This is a kind of physical activity, it could be, but this is not sport. But he or she is included in the sport participant numbers. So there is only one way left, and it's the most subjective way of how you can measure sport, and then you rely on surveys, and that's it's still subjective. It's the perception of people, as was mentioned before. But again, then I think it's important that you stress what kind of activities could be involved, and then you are able to compare or make comparisons between countries, between groups, and between measurements in time, something like that.
Thank you very much. I have heard that the coffee is not quite ready yet, so we'll take just one question more if you have one. Susanna Holm, please.
Sorry, maybe question or not question. Susanna Holm from the European Commission. I just heard many references to policy implications, and I think we all of us here, we are convinced. I mean, there's a lot of evidence, there are many good practices, and thank you really for what we heard this morning, and also what came from the examples from the Netherlands and from Hungary. Thank you for that. I just thought it might be interesting to briefly explain what is happening at the EU level. Commissioner Vassiliou referred to the EU physical activity guidelines this morning in her speech. And what we are currently working at and trying to do is to convince or to enhance the implementation of these EU physical activity guidelines at a national level. And we are currently preparing in the Commission a policy initiative, a new policy initiative on health-enhancing physical activity that builds on these EU physical activity guidelines. And these guidelines, and that is actually our starting point. These guidelines are built on a cross-sectoral approach, and what we saw and the evidence is actually there that the main reason why policies are not implemented at national level is the lack of a cross-sectoral approach. And what we want to do now is promoting this approach. And I hope very much that all sectors, including the sports sectors, will help us in this task. Thank you.
I consider that to be a comment. And since nobody from the panel, yes, what comment?
Thank you very much for your comment. And came from the European Commission. I really like to state that the movements and initiatives from the European level do help our countries and also local policy and also researchers. So thank you very much. And I think it's going to make a difference.
How nice is that? An affirmation in an EU conference that the EU has a difference to make. So thank you for that. And that should allow us to say a big round of thank you and applause for the speakers before going to the conference break. Please note